What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
And my name is Dave.
And this is the Deep Dive. I caught you there a little bit already drinking, huh?
Yeah, I got a Coke Zero in here today.
Nice.
Yeah.
In our circle of friends mugs.
That's
They're
right.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we are in week 4 of our Reset series, and the title of this sermon was called Foundations,
Right.
or Foundations of Discipleship. And I'm really excited to get into this one. How
Lots
about
to
you?
talk about today.
Lots to talk about. Yeah.
All right.
Several different kinds of community. Let's get into it.
So, Nick, let me start. I had a great Friday evening. Went over to some church members' house.
Oh, fun!
And so it turns out that the man was actually not going to Steve Carolyn Jones, but Steve Jones used to you grew up with their kids, right?
Yeah, Paul.
Paul, yeah.
He was in my grade. Went through elementary school with them
and played Little League baseball with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he coached against you in Little League baseball. Do you remember that?
Probably.
Because he told me a great story about you that I have to say.
A Little League story about me?
Yeah, and it's kind of a compliment in a way. But
My
it's
glory
also,
days?
Yeah, he said that you hit a home run like every other at bat back in that time. I don't know how old you were, 8, 9, something like that.
Somewhere, yeah, I was pretty good.
Okay, so he said they were playing a close game against y'all, and it was late in the game, and they had runners on base, and you were up to bat. And so the coaches huddled and said, "What are we going to do about this kid?" And they said, "We're going to walk him," which in Little League, you don't really see a lot of intentional passes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they intentionally walked you. And when you got to first base, he was coaching first base. He said you were crying.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I don't remember that specific moment, but it does not surprise me. When I was younger, I was pretty competitive. So, like, if I struck out, I was probably, like, on the verge of throwing stuff or crying.
Yeah.
If I'm sure that I just really wanted to hit. So when I got to first base, it was just upset that they didn't let me hit.
Yeah, he said he came over and tried to say, like, it's a compliment. He was afraid that you thought you had done something wrong or something. I imagined, just knowing you, that you were crying because you were mad.
I wanted to get the game-winning hit.
Yeah.
My parents probably bribed me with ice cream afterwards,
Yeah.
so I didn't get that game-winning hit.
So, yeah.
I do remember, speaking of my glory days, I remember there was this one time we were in the playoffs, and a coach said to me, "If you can get a game-winning hit, I will give you Braves tickets."
Yeah.
And I got the game-winning hit, and sure enough, he gave me 2 tickets to go see the Braves.
Awesome.
And I was like, "Oh, this is awesome!"
All right, so now I know how to motivate you.
That's right, Braves tickets. So
Yeah.
you want me to do anything? There
Yeah.
you go. Well, Dave, let's get out of my glory days for a moment, and let's kind of get into this week's sermon about foundations. Why don't you kind of start us off and give us an idea of what you talked about, and we can dive into it.
Yeah, as we're continuing this Reset series, and if you've been following along, it's essentially looking at a couple of things. Discipleship is really ultimately what we're talking about.
Right.
But we are also doing a Bible study kind of covertly on Haggai. It's 2 chapters. It's a great story, and it parallels what we're talking about with Reset, because it was a community in a reset moment. And so we've gone through, them being back from their captivity in Babylonia after they were exiled, and coming home and rebuilding their lives, but not rebuilding the temple.
Right.
Then Haggai coming and giving them, the warning about it. Then we get through to them actually starting the temple, and have some initial sort of frustrations about that and disappointments about that. But then they finally, this week, we get to the point where they've actually laid the foundation. And so Haggai comes back with another word, and he says, before, you were working, you were working night and day, but you never were seeming to get ahead. He talked about, there weren't enough crops. You would go and look in the barn. There would be, half as much as you needed, or, talking about the wine vats, you were expecting, 20 and there were 10 or whatever. And now, that's, you've got the foundation, and now God says, "I will bless you. I will bless you." And so there's sort of a theological thing I do want to point out, because, you kind of have the sometimes people say Old Testament God and New Testament God. I just think sometimes in our reading, we need to understand, their understanding or their expression of God sometimes is not exactly the way that we would put it. I don't believe God would cause harm, but human choices that we make can cause our harm. And they had chosen to live their lives in a way that was apart from God and not having God in the center, and their lives were not going very well. And so now that they've, had this return of finally, let me see what it said. So take it to this heart from this day forward. The foundation of the Lord's temple was laid. From this day forward, I will bless you. And so it's just sort of a stating that God is with them now. God has always been with them, but God is now with them, and their blessing is going to happen as they've centered their lives back on Christ. And so from that, started looking at in our reset moments that we look for our center, not in the temple, not in like the church building, but centered on Christ. And so we look to Christ as our example for how we should do our discipleship. And so from that, I sort of ascertained 4 different kinds of relationships that Jesus had that were very important, that I think if we're going to follow him, we need to have all 4 of those kinds of relationships going on in our lives as well. And so you want to go through them and then we can kind of pack them, or you got something on what it says?
No, I think it's a good reminder, really, just to have God be that centerpiece. And then, it takes us back almost to the wheel and the spokes, that
exactly
this comes out from this. And I think what you're kind of almost talking about are these like 4 branch off points that'll like really kind of help us stay in that middle ground.
Right. And I do think, I do also like the idea that, we have to have a sure and strong foundation. So just like, it's almost similar to, putting Jesus in the center of the wheel, but also Jesus as our sure foundation. Yeah. And so,
and I love the idea, maybe this is a little bit of a peek ahead of what we'll be talking about, but I love that all of these are relational in aspect,
right?
Because I think at the center of it, it's a relationship with Christ and our relationship with our community, because our community is going to be the thing that really holds us to a place, or holds us to accountability and holds us to, living life together and doing this. And I think that's what Jesus showed us, with the disciples. And, even when Jesus was like, all right, guys, it's time for me to head out, time for me to go get resurrected and all that stuff. And they were like, wait, what? But then they learned how to do it with each other, like they were still in community together, these relationships and stuff like that they had to have their individual space, but also their communal space together where they were worshiping and
there's balance there too, as we see in these 4 different types of relationships. We need them all 4, and I think sometimes we might tend to emphasize one over the other, but all 4 are crucial, all 4 are important, all 4 of us help us to go forward, as we we're doing faith. And so the first one, I try to make them in real succinct sentences. So just you, but you could say you and God, you and Jesus. If you look at Jesus's life, he was so intentional about getting off by himself to be with the Father, that he would go out to pray and, just, I don't know how many times in a passage of scripture we'll talk about, Jesus, receded to some place to pray, and sometimes the crowds would follow him. And so it was difficult for him. People, everybody wanted to be close to him. But he knew he had to have that for himself. And, it's Jesus Christ and, the Trinity and all of that going on, but still he knew within himself. And he also, I think he knew that we would need that as an example too, that we all need time alone with God to be still and know that God is God.
There is a very personal component when it comes to your relationship with God. You have to have these quiet times and these quiet spaces. And I have been on and off good about making that a practice in my life of maintaining a quiet time and a true quiet time, not one where I've got my phone and I'm reading my Bible off my phone or or whatever, because I ultimately find that like when I have my phone and I'm reading off of it, still whatever dings, the MLB app will pop up and then my brain's way over here or way over there. And so, but to be able to truly get away, from the kids, from the family, from everything, and kind of center in and focus is really powerful. And I can tell you, at least in my personal life, and this isn't just because I'm like, yeah, you should do this, but every time I make an effort to have like individual quiet time, personal quiet time with the Lord, like my spiritual gifts start flourishing. I have a discernment gift and stuff like that. And when I'm really in tune with my like relationship with God, when I'm reading, when I'm in my quiet times and stuff like that, is when it seems to like power up, if you know what I mean. Like otherwise I can still tap into that some, but it's not as easy, I guess, is maybe a way. But, and I'm not saying just do it so that you power up yourself, but it helps me stay focused and tuned with who God is and what God wants from me in certain spaces. Does that make sense?
100% it does. Yeah, I would say the same on a lot of what you just said. For me, sometimes I don't know exactly how I feel about something.
Yeah.
Until I have one of those times. And, I wish I could give a magical formula. I know part of it is being off by yourself and getting away from the clock and cell phones. Maybe you'd have your Bible, maybe some other kind of devotional materials. But those kinds of things that can be distractions. But many times for me, it's just being alone and praying and sitting and listening. And, those things of discernments are ideas that I will have or inspirations that I will have come in those moments.
Yeah.
They come in other ways as well, but mostly in those times. And, decisions that I have to make, it's one of those things that's almost unexpressible. How that energizes and renews and refreshes us.
Yeah, there are definitely spaces like when you're in, I guess, communion with the Lord. Like there are sometimes.
What a great word, by the way, communion. I love that. Yeah.
Like when you're kind of really there, sometimes I don't even ask the question of like, what do I do here or what do I do there? Sometimes I'm just like, Lord, just show me what you want. Mm-hmm. And everything going on in my day. The relationships, the things that will be coming my way today. I know I've got this thing at church that I got to get set up and I want you to be a part of that. But I might not ask like the specific questions like, well, what should I do about this specific thing? Sometimes it's just offering up my day, mm-hmm. And saying, I need you to walk with me wherever we go. Mm-hmm. And I need you to help me. So when we get there, give me something, you know what I mean? And it helps in so many ways. And even in the like random council times or in the random times where it's like, hey, let's brainstorm about how to communicate better or what, like all of a sudden it's like, boom, boom, boom. Things are just kind of popping off. And it's mm-hmm. like, where did that come from? Like, I haven't thought about this much before, but it was the perfect idea at the perfect time in the perfect place. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a real centering kind of thing too, as well. Because I think just so often, and I don't think I'm alone in this, we often are in sort of reaction mode. What's the next thing that's coming up? Mm-hmm. Do that, do this. But taking a step back to retreat, and then to be reminded in that moment that you're not off by yourself. It's you and God,
right.
And God is with you all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's in those moments where we've had this intentional thing. Is like when you said communion, there's a community. The Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, and you, just you. So I like that. I love that word, communion. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah.
What was the next one?
The next one was you and the crowd.
Ooh, can you elaborate on that one?
I can. You and the crowd, and again, looking at Jesus, and of course, Jesus taught to the crowds, but also just the need to be in a community that's bigger than just you, and different than you and a few, which we'll get to in a second. Mm-hmm. But it's you and a whole group of people that are a community of faith, maybe the whole faith community, like our worship services or some other gathering of folks, just to be reminded of how the body of Christ is together, and
Yeah.
in those powerful times that happen, particularly I think in worship, we all need those kinds of things to come and just to be reminded how big God is and how good God is and how God works through the church to renew us and give us faith.
Yeah, I think a good illustration of this actually recently is I don't know if you've gotten to talk to Eileen Howard recently, but she's been kind of wandering around the building the last couple of weeks. She just kind of had started coming back because coming back out of COVID and stuff like that. So I want to give her a shout out. But every time I've seen her the last couple of weeks, she just goes, "I'm just so glad to be back." And she's got like a little beam on her face of like she's starting to help out with the kids and stuff like that. And I think it really illustrates that part of like coming to be together with the whole, And when you really stop and think in worship, if the music's part of it, the preaching's part of it, the praying's part of it. But if you stop and really look at like all these people in this room have come from different aspects of life, different places of life to worship the same God you are together.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful to think, you've got people from all different walks of life, all different places in their own spiritual journeys, but we're all there together to lift our voices, to hear what God has for us. And I think that's a high and holy calling for people on our side, to say like we need to be helping facilitate, a relationship with God and facilitate the Holy Spirit in that space. But also like it's just a powerful moment when you consider that as a congregate, even of like,
right. And
these are all people walking
and different,
with me.
in those personal, just you moments with God, that's powerful as well. But it's a different kind of power that I think we feel in the crowd when we're in a worship service with a lot of believers together worshiping God. God said, "Where two or three are gathered, I will be there." But there is something that's really sort of palpable in those moments in worship when we're all together.
And I can at least speak for my kind of generation, and I assume it's probably the same for most generations. It's not really a generational thing, probably, but we all want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves.
For sure.
Like we want to feel that sense of meaning and purpose and stuff like that. So I think when we all come together, we can see it's almost like a visual component of like, oh, I am a part of something so much bigger. That's why the stories and stuff are so important, that we can tell about what's going on and stuff like that. So
yeah, for sure. And so then we move into two other categories. And one thing that I pointed out in the sermon that sometimes people can have a tendency, if they're choosing just one of these, and they shouldn't. We need all four.
Sure.
But I do run across people that, it's just me and Jesus. I don't need the church anymore. The church is messed up. I just do my thing with Jesus, just me and him. That's all I need.
Yeah.
And, you really can't be a fully formed disciple in that way. There are other people that don't do the other three aspects of relationships, and just they come to church and just sort of as a participant or spectator, and that is equally as anemic. I think we need all of those aspects. I use the example that it's sort of like we watch a YouTube video, or I think I said a documentary on doctors or something, hospitals, and think, okay, well, now we're a doctor. Well, no, we can't just be a spectator. We have to we have to have other parts of relationships that come into it, and these last two that we look at, you and a few, which is sort of the small groups, for lack of a better word. And within Jesus' life, you see that, of course, in the 12 disciples, that the majority of his time in the Gospels, a lot of his teaching is just with the 12. And so he is discipling them. He is mentoring them. But even within that, Jesus had an inner circle, so to speak, with Peter, James, and John.
Right.
And so we need both of those kind of relationships. I do think we need those close, very close friends that may be 2, 3, 4 people that we can go to with anything, that we can say basically anything to and not feel judged. They can say anything to us and challenge us. those are really important to have and to foster in our lives. But also just something happens in small groups, in a community of people where folks know your name, even in a church our size.
Right.
I mean, we're not that big a church, but even in a church our size, you can't know everybody. Right. And so breaking it down into small groups that study God's word together, that in some ways do life together, maybe do some sort of mission as well. But life happens and growth happens when people notice when you're not there. It's hard to. I mean, I try to look at the congregation and see who's here and not there, but I can't know everybody. Can't sometimes remember who's here and who's not.
Right.
But like when you're in a small group, people know, and you're kind of held accountable to that. And so, the intentionality of being a part of a life group. And I think, both you and I could share stories of small groups we've been a part about and just how valuable they've been to our life and our spiritual development.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate the importance a couple things. I want to reiterate the importance of finding a group to be a part of. And again, you don't have to be in a group with everybody at the church.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not that we don't want you to get to know everybody at the church or feel loved by everybody at the church, but there are always going to be certain people you're drawn to do life with. And those are the people you're going to go hang out with outside of it. You're going to go watch the 4th of July fireworks or go eat or go to a ball game or have over for dinner and play Mexican Train or whatever. Like, there's always going to be a smaller group of people that you're going to kind of be in like real community with. And we want to encourage that. But I think, as Dave said, you still might only have 2 or 3 that you're really diving in deep with, that you're really like, hey, I just need to be open and honest. I might say some things that you don't like, but I know you're going to love me through it. You know what I mean? But also, hey, I see this happening in your life, and I want to come beside you because I think it could harm you. That accountability that you were talking about, I think is important.
Yeah, and I think you and I can talk about this maybe, that we have a desire as church leaders and church staff members to grow our grow groups, our small groups. We've got some fantastic Sunday school classes. We call them grow groups, but they meet on Sunday. Those people love each other. They're consistent. But that's not everybody. And we recognize as leaders in the church that we're missing some different types of people groups within our church. And we have a real desire. In fact, our leadership team has made as a goal to create, 5 new groups here in the next 6 months or so, to try to help people connect. Because, it's hard when we say, okay, we got these 3 Sunday school classes or 4 Sunday school classes, whatever we have, go to one of those. Because first of all, they're pretty big. They're actually not small groups anymore.
Right.
Or a couple of them aren't. But also, just because, it may be, primarily couples, in the Sunday school classes, or it may be an age thing. One of the places that we've talked a lot about is our sort of young adults. There's a few things, but let's be honest, we really haven't got what we need going for our young adults, particularly maybe like career, right out of college age kids. We need to,
like really young families,
really
singles.
We so if you're watching this, just know we have a desire, and if God's laid this on your heart, please reach out to us, because we don't want to create something just kind of guessing what people need. We need to hear, what is it? What kind of group would you like to be a part about? Maybe it's stay-at-home moms who are looking to do a Bible study together, during the weekday when their kids are in school, or maybe, it's dads that, maybe it's empty nesters that are dealing with that. Maybe it's people that, that are in other different kind of life circumstances. We want to find those groups that are going to connect with you, for you to do life, to study the Bible, and to grow together.
Right. And just for the sake of transparency, I want to say that we don't want to develop these groups just to say we have 10 groups to meet some criteria. Our our only goal and our only desire is to help you get into a community that you can grow to love and trust, that can walk life with you.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that's where the power is in that type of stuff. And since you kind of mentioned the young adults, if you're a young adult, reach out like Dave said, or if you're kind of in that criteria where you don't feel like you're quite being met. But also, if you are maybe an older couple that feels like you have something to pour into that group and maybe you want to start something, since we're advertising, I guess, a little bit there, hit us up, because, I know I can tell you there's specifically two couples who are like, I would love to be mentored a little bit along the way. I don't necessarily want somebody to lead that's my age. I would like to have somebody that I can see that next level, that next step, or the next 2 or 3 steps down the road. So if you're out there and you're listening, hit me up.
Yeah. And as I think about Teresa and my life together, I think some of our most powerful experiences have been in a small group somewhere together. That's been very important. Those people, from past churches, are the people that we remember from past churches, because we were invested in life with them.
Right.
And periods in my life where I grew a lot as a spouse, as a parent, as a Christian. They were often, almost always, in some sort of small group or a grow group. So they're vital. They're important. And we want to facilitate them happening.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got some great ones, but we need, we need to.
We recognize that there's still some gaps.
We
to
do.
fill.
There you go. Yeah, that's what we are.
Yeah.
So that leads to the last one, and is you and the team. And I say that in this sort of a ministry team thing. We all have various spiritual gifts. We have our passions and talents and that sort of thing. So when we are able to use those as some sort of team to glorify God and to make a difference in God's kingdom, those relationships are also very, very vital. And it can be sort of like you and the few, and I think sometimes there's a lot of overlap there, but it really is a little bit different, because it can be anything from going on a mission trip to Mexico, to singing in the choir, or working part of the production team, or being part of the greeters. You and a team that work together and are doing God's mission together, that's very, very powerful. Those are kind of relationships that we also need. And we've got a lot of great ones, great teams, the church, but that's a place to plug in, and help, get you connected with something that you can be really passionate and good at.
Yeah, this is definitely the hands-on component. This is, but anybody can join a congregation, anybody can join a small group and stuff like that, and your gifts and talents might not really come out, but this is the space where you're doing something jointly, where whatever skills you have, whatever talents you have, will go towards a greater good and go towards achieving whatever goal.
Sure.
I can think of several instances where I've seen this happen. Doing youth musicals and mission trips and stuff like that. Actually, about 4 or 5 years ago, we asked Craig Hunter to go on a mission trip with us, because we were like, we need somebody who's handy, and he became instantly just a part. He's probably not a guy that would have jumped right into like a youth group where the kids are throwing dodgeballs and stuff like that. But that was an avenue where we said, hey, we want you to be a part of this team.
Sure.
And he came and he just imparted so much wisdom about how to do jobs, just wisdom about life. And it poured into those kids. I mean, really even poured into the leadership and stuff like that, of just, he was in his element.
I can see Craig doing that, and those people, those kids got to see a really good man, and have that model before you, just a man, who can do all that kind of stuff, and to just such a sweetheart he's got. So, that's awesome.
That's being part of the team. That's when you're stepping out and saying, I'm going to use my gifts for the betterment of my church family, for the betterment of my community, for the betterment of wherever God's sending me to go do something, So I think it's awesome.
Yeah. So what would you say to somebody who's watching this, who has been coming to church here, maybe watching online, and they want to get connected into you and a few, into a small group, or you and the team to get on a ministry team? What would be their next steps?
Well, I think that's kind of dependent on the team and stuff like that. But ultimately, it's just reach out, have coffee with one of us or with the leader of whatever ministry maybe you're trying to get into, and just express your heart. Like let people know, like, hey, I have this ability and I could really use it with children. Like I think of Teresa, teacher's heart. Somebody who could be really good in a children's ministry space or something like that. If she were to reach out and let Nicole know, like, hey, I'm open and I'm available.
Oh, Nicole knows.
I'm sure. I'm sure she's probably already grabbed her.
Yeah.
But like just as an example, but I think a lot of it is don't be afraid to put yourself out there a little bit. Even if we don't have something right away, knowing that it's out there is something that we can work with. If you want to teach, we can find a place for that. For leadership teams, we have a Connect, Grow, Serve lead. You can talk to them. You can talk to me, and just say like, hey, these are places where I feel like I can plug in. For some of our administrative teams and stuff like that, there's kind of a nominations process and stuff like that, right? Isn't that
right? Yeah. Basically, I would say if you want to know more, we have our email address for this podcast, which is deepdive@hickoryflat.church.
Yep. Or if you remember our names, it's N. Yother at hickoryflat.org or D. Benson at hickoryflat.org.
Yeah, that's part of what we would love to do is to facilitate you getting connected with the right people to get you involved. And like if in the case, or maybe you've got a passion for being on some sort of a ministry that we don't have yet. Let's talk about that. Chances are we've got a place we can plug you in as far as ministry teams, and also in some of the grow groups that are already existing. But maybe you are feeling the need for one of the community areas that we don't really have yet.
Yeah. And also like this is part of the vision that we're really putting out there. Our statement is empowering hope, joy, and purpose. And we really want to help you find your purpose and help grow that, help train you in that and stuff like that. So this is something we're committed to. So reach out to us. Even if it's just a hunch and you just like, I don't really know what to do with this, but I just feel this little inkling that I need to try something, or come talk to us. We'd love to brainstorm with you. Like I said, go get some coffee, come to the office. I've got York peppermint patties in my office. You can have a few of. Yeah. We're always up for conversations and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I think that's where it would start.
Sure. Awesome. Well, we're going a little bit long today, but
that's true.
It's been good. It's been fun talking.
This is such a good topic, and honestly, one of the things that I've been working on in my jumping into this new role as the executive pastor is the assimilation process, and this is almost it to a T. Focus on your relationship with God, come be a part of community, get deeper in your community, and then go out and serve. That's that's kind of the template, So however we can help you make that happen, we'd love to do that. So. But like he said, we are kind of running out of time. If you guys have any comments or questions about anything we've talked about, deepdive@hickoryflat.org, as he said earlier. Even if it's, hey, I'd love to get some coffee with you and talk to you about whatever, bring it on. We'd love it. We do check out the comments, so you can even drop it in the Facebook or the YouTube comments, and we'll make sure it gets where it needs to go. And yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah.
Not that they're not all good, but this is a good one to me.
Yeah, it's been timely. It has. I've enjoyed working on it. One more this Sunday coming up as we wind this down. We're going to be kind of doing kind of a deep dive that we'll do a deep dive on next week on the second part of this relationship. So you and the crowd, resetting church, all of us together. And so we'll be focused on that this coming as we wind this series down and finish up the book of Haggai. And so
sounds
it'll be
awesome.
Great. Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it always. And do you got anything else to add, Dave?
No.
All right. Well, we'll catch you next time. See you later.
All right. God bless you.